we look at the past, I would hope we can get inspired by looking at the craftsmanship and looking at the details and long to build better because we see beautiful things like this. We're going to just talk about these steps that are taking place and how we get there. Now, step one, the arts and crafts movement. This really, if you read quite a bit about it, everybody believes that it's kind of the arts and crafts are, and this is the prairie craftsman and bungalow styles, Frank Lloyd Wright, the Green brothers out in California. They're really the first modernists, okay? The rejection of Victorian values, the materialism, the excesses, a desire for honesty in architecture, which we'll talk about that, and then this influences of the simplicity and the Japanese stylings that take place in this style, right? They are rejecting this, and this is Craftsman Farms, this is Gustav Stickley's place, right? That everything is wrong with this, right? The way the houses are decorated, the over-ornamentation, the lack of a style, right? It's just the Queen Anne is just a mix of different styles, and it's just gaudy and kind of over the top. The way the chair changes from this heavily carved French Empire looking thing to the very simple, honestry and construction where you can see the joinery and everything and how it goes together. So a dramatic change. Starts with this, the Columbian Exposition, the World's Fair in Chicago, and this was, the buildings that were built, the Great White City, and in the pond in front of the thing was the Japanese ho-ho den, okay? And Frank Lloyd Wright, the Green brothers, and Gustav Stickley all see this Japanese style architecture with the simplicity and the beauty and the joinery and the how these things were put together. When these were all being plastered with wires as temporary buildings, these craftsmen came over and carefully assembled these things with tight joinery and everything else. It was such a peaceful little place over here. It really changed and had a huge influence on how people thought about that. But these house styles, right, that if you think of this versus the Victorian, and if you've been to Frank Lloyd Wright's house in Oak Park, there's still the Victorians there, and then his long, low houses, it's really dramatic, and, modern and jarring, okay, how different these houses were versus what was going on. This is the Gamble House out in California. This is the Green brothers. Joinery, craftsmanship, functional ornamentation, right? All the brackets and the eaves and everything else are ornamented, but they are functional ornamentation. These are radical houses. We don't look at them as necessarily radical right now, but this is like 1904, okay? And the things that were being built compared to this, it was just being like, what are you doing? What even is that? As they looked at it at that time. Certainly these interiors are over the top. This is the Gamble House. Apparently they were at one point were going to paint over all this woodwork, which would have been quite the tragedy. Right, but everything's built different, right? The fireplaces, the stairs, the joinery, all these things that are going on, the ornamentation is very different. And so you can definitely see the Japanese influence in this architecture, but this is modernism. Frank Lloyd Wright, I used to always wonder, kind of like the Beatles, like, why are they such a big deal? But Frank Lloyd Wright really was a big deal. He invented himself and reinvented himself, and his influences, the more I read about modernism, especially in Europe, there was a portfolio of his work that was over there in like 1910, 1915 that was groundbreaking for so many of these international architects. But look what he does to houses, okay? He takes the house, the vertical house, and basically turns everything on its side and just this low horizontal design, okay? And everything in the houses that he's built is accentuating the horizontal. He would have first of all, the bricks were the Roman bricks that were long and thin. He would have the mortar joints, cut in this way but not cut in vertically. He would change the color of the mortar joints so that all you see was the lines there, right? There was a horizontality to his designs that no one else was doing. And if you think this house was like 1904, 1908, 1909, we start copying this in the ranch period, right? 50 years later, okay? That's how far ahead of everything he was and the way he was thinking. The inside of his house is the open floor plan, 1909, right? We don't start doing open floor plans till after 1950. So really was a genius. He was apparently an arrogant genius, but he was a genius for the things that he was doing and how he was thinking about stuff. But his work is incredibly influential, and the whole international style that becomes so horizontal is, certainly inspired by a lot of the things he was doing. But these interiors still look modern. They still look crazy and over the top, but amazing. And this is the one in Oak Park, 1902. I mean, 1902. So that Victorian, that Queen Anne Victorian, is something that could have been right next door to it. And this block and this street, it's radical. And I don't think we see it that way anymore because it's been around for 120 years, but it was radical, crazy. So first step towards modernism is the arts and crafts movement and what goes on in this period.